Hello, this is Jeff Ryle from G4 Geomatic Resources in Houston. And today we're just going to update as revised basic RTK network settings using a GS18 or GPS, any GPS like a GPS sensor with a CS20. This is an LTE, and we'll have the SIM card in the actual CS20. Okay. So once again, to get on the internet, the APN is really the password. So it depends on what SIM card you're using. So typically there's a new SIM card here, the DAC, that we can help supply. The multi-carrier can now hop on T-Mobile, Verizon, or AT&T. And the new APN is capital DAC. The old one was lowercase tn1, so we're pushing clients towards the new DAC. If you went direct with Verizon, we'd have to supply the IMEI number to them. And if we went direct with Verizon, we'd use lowercase BZW Internet. Smart Connect is through Smartnet. It's based off of AT&T, and it's the lowercase m2m005125.attz. If you went directly to AT&T, they'd use broadband. Okay, and it is possible to have a SIM card in the head, and DAC also supplies a static SIM card if we're doing point-to-point. And this will also work off the network as well. It allows us to dial into, if we're using that GS18 as a base, it'd be a base or a Rover. And in that case, we'd use SO for South 01.VZ static. Now, if we moved around, this would change. It's really important. So if you went up to, like, say, Chicago, Illinois, then we'd update that to MW. Otherwise, you have a hard time getting on the internet. So if we're in the South, in the Houston area, then this would work. And some guys think it's a static IP. So once again, if you had that SIM card plugged in the head to do point-to-point, it requires the GAT27. And in this video, we're going to be putting the SIM card in the CS20. There's another video that goes over how to set this up. Okay. But if you do have a GS18, you can have it in the head or in the controller. It's a nice function. Once again, right now we're running version 9, so we'd recommend keep your firmware updated. Version 7.5 really improved tracking next to the trees, and we'll go over the satellite settings, especially with the Solar Max. It's important to have L2C set to automatic, not always track. That's really important. Interference mitigation, turn it off, and multipath reduction turned on. And we're recommending for the next year or so to have 15-degree cutoff angle to cut the load line noise out. All right, so what's going to be talked about. There's another video on the Solar Max. Here's a website to have a look at to see when that occurs. And just those previous settings are important. Once again, we can run the IMAX. We have an IMAX, which is a network correction. So once again, we're working in an urban area like Houston, we have a bunch of base stations. An IMAX is what we recommend first. It's a little bit more accurate. And it picks like a cell that could be like a 20 mile by 20 mile area. And IMAX is master auxiliary. So once again, it uses these auxiliary base stations to compute corrections for the atmosphere. And then it funnels out corrections from your master. Okay. The nearest is a single baseline. And once again, that could be used in areas that are more remote, like in El Paso, there's not a bunch of base stations, or bad weather's coming in, like storms, lightning. You have fronts like 20 miles away, then we can switch from the IMAX to the NEAR. And also, so if there's a solar flare, the NEAR might be a little bit better because there's less noise in that cell. Okay. And we're going to be tracking a whole bunch of satellites, so it's important. We'll go over these settings, make sure you have the right source table. If you have the wrong source table, then if you're tracking a GPS and GLONASS, you can kick out half the size that are available and affect your performance. Okay. Here hooked with the GS18, and we're going over some basic RTK settings. This CS20 is an LTE 4G. We have the SIM card in the actual CS20 data collector, and you can see here we're on the internet and we have bar strength. Let's take a look at the settings here. First thing I'm going to do is hit the star button. I'm using Workstyles, and I got 2 Workstyles here, one IMAX and one NEAR. So the IMAX is a Smartnet network correction. I prefer to start with this.
the NEAR is a single baseline. That could be used if there's bad weather coming in, like storms, lightning, or if you're working in more remote areas. Let's say you're in West Texas and there's only a few base stations, the NEAR would be handy. Also, if there's a solar max, the NEAR might be also very beneficial. So that's why I call it 1 IMAX and 2 NEAR. If IMAX is not working, I'll hang up, disconnect, and switch to the NEAR. So let me just hit next. That's how fast I can change it. And let's take a look at the settings, how to get on the internet. So right now, we'll hit settings, connections, or the connections. And on the first tab, it says CS connections, and we'll go down to CS internet. And if I hit edit, once again, we have it enabled for the CS modem because that's where the SIM card is. And then if I hit F4 control, that's where I put in the APN. And this is important. The APN is basically the password. And this will change. So right now we're using a DAC card, and the DAC card can hop on Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. So we'll have a list. If you're, once again, if you're using like strictly Verizon, then we type in the VZW internet. And once again, that APN has to match up with the SIM card that you're using. Okay, so we'll hit OK. We'll escape back out to the main screen. If you were going to go to Verizon, they need the IMEI number. So once again, if I hit settings, about Captivate, and on the first tab, CS controller, see it says IMEI number. If you're going to deal directly with AT&T or Verizon, they might need this number to activate that SIM card. Okay, so that's where that's at. All right, so once again, that's how we get on the internet. And it's now we have a triangle. That means we're not on the internet. So if I click on here, go to internet status, it'll check these boxes. And under device, right now it's not on. But when it gets on the internet, it'll tell us which provider that it's using. Okay, so we'll just give it a few seconds and it should click in, and away we go. So once again, that was settings, connections, or other connections, and now let's make sure that that's correct. Okay, all right. Once again, we have all the GPS turned on. This is important. So under settings, GPS, satellite tracking, all our constellations are checked. And we want to make sure that we have L2C set to automatic, 15-degree cutoff angle, and interference and mitigation turned off, multipath reduction turned on. This is important, especially during the solar flare. These settings are very, very important. So let's hit OK there, all right? And then that shows our satellites up here. Now, once again, if we are trying to get into the network, we'll hit settings, connections, or other connections. And the next tab over is GS connections. And the top line is RTK Rover. Now right now, if I was running, and see it says CS modem registered, and now it's connected to the internet. So now that triangle's gone away, and this little bar will come up here. And that was it picking the best provider. So we'll take a look at it a little bit later and see which provider we're on. Once again, if I was running, we have a separate video on how to set this up if you're running the SIM card in the GS18 head. So we're going to come up here to the top one that says RTK Rover. We'll hit F3 edit. And once again, we check the box. This is important. It says CS Internet 1. So once again, that's going to tie us to the CS modem. RTCM3 data is important. RTK base, just leave that automatically detect. RTK Rover is IMAX. So if I was running the NEAR, when I set the NEAR up, I just change that to nearest. Okay, then we hit OK. And now F4 is control, and this shows us, hey, this is the server we're going to use. So I can create a new server. Let's edit this one, and I got a name in here. And since we're in Texas, we want tx.smartnetna.com. If I was in Louisiana, I change that to la.smartnet.com. Okay, and we're going to use 9301. And over here, ntrip, that's the username and password we type in. I just want to show you mine. That's important. Type that in. We'll hit store. Then we'll hit OK. Now the source table, if I'm on the internet, it'll pick. And then with 9301, MSN is critical. So once again, I pick IMAX. If I was doing the NEAR, I pick the MSN NEAR. And this gives me all the GPS constellations. So once again, we're on the internet. We'll hit OK. And once again, we have our big circle here. Our 1D quantities are vertical, 2D is horizontal. This is 26 by 11. If I click on here and hit start streaming data, that'll dial in. And then it should fix. Okay, so let's give it a few seconds. The arrow will start pumping. And we're dialed into the network. And then it should start fixing. Okay, all right. And now it's fixed and our CQs go down and we're in good shape. So right now we're tracking GPS, R for Russian, E for European, C for Chinese. Let me show you a common mistake. I'm going to disconnect, hang up. It's always important to disconnect at the end of your survey before you turn it off or before you switch from IMAX to NEAR. And where guys might make a mistake, if I hit the server, and it is possible to have the old 10,000, okay? And what happens, you're only as good as the base station. So once again, if I hit that, hit OK, then I hit my source, I have a bunch more source tables. If I picked RTCM3 IMAX and then hit OK, this is a common mistake. I'll come in here, we'll dial in. Remember before we're tracking like 25 satellites? It'll start pumping in. And what happens is it's now using a source table and it'll start fixing. See it drop from 25 down to 13, and it's only GR, and our E is blank and C is blank because that source table is only outputting GPS and Russian satellites. So once again, that's a common mistake. I'll hit stop and I'll go back, and that's why I want to use the 9301. So if using Smartnet, once again, we'll edit that, go to 9301, and then I'll pick the proper source table. Okay, so hit OK, hit source, and pick, and the MSN will track all the information, like all 4 constellations. So once again, if we came down here, it's got GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou, and that's really important. So once again, we'll show you the reason why. Come in here, start streaming, we got to dial in, and once again, we're now tracking 25 satellites as opposed to 13. So that's why we want the 9301. Okay, and once again, if we're going to switch from IMAX to NEAR, once again, there's bad weather, solar max. Once again, we just hit stop, and then we hit star, Workstyle, and switch that Workstyle. Okay, and so that's how we set it up. Once again, the NEAR, if we switch over, the only difference is it's going to be the source table and also the network correction type. Okay, so when I create these, that's the only difference that we program in. So once again, if we came down here, we hit settings. Once again, GS sensor satellite tracking. We want to make sure that it's 15 degrees, automatic, and interference mitigation is turned off. Really important. And once again, settings, connections, all the connections. If we come over to GS, hit edit. Once again, we're going to get internet on the CS Internet 1. Our network is now nearest. If I click down here under control, we've got MSN NEAR. And that's picking the single baseline. Okay? And once again, it's just as easy as swapping over and then once again dialing in. Some guys will use RTK profiles. So if you have those set up, I can have just one work style. I prefer Workstyles. But once again, you can pick your RTK profiles here and change them. What that will do is if you ever do that, it'll kick you off the internet. Might take another 40 seconds to log on to the internet. Okay, so once again, we have to have the internet. Got to be very close to the base station. If I click on here, go to current position, it's then going to tell me baseline how far away we are from the base stations. Right now we're 38,000 feet. Okay, so the longer we get, the CQs will go up. Okay, 1D is vertical, 2D is horizontal, and that shows us how far the base station is away from us. Okay.